All right, let's dive right into one of the most incredible stories of warfare. We're talking about a conflict where one of the world's biggest superpowers, with all its mind-blowing technology, was basically fought to a standstill. And by who? An enemy armed with shovels, wicker baskets, and, well, the dirt right under their feet. This is the unbelievable story of the tunnels of Cu Chi.
Okay, so I want you to imagine something. It's 1966, you're an American commander in Vietnam. Your base, it's supposed to be a fortress, right? But every single night, your soldiers are getting attacked. And the enemy, they're never seen, they're never caught, they just disappear without a trace. It got so bad that one commander famously said it wasn't like fighting soldiers, it was like fighting ghosts.
And this situation was just maddening. Think about it. You're at the huge Cu Chi base camp, just 30 kilometers outside of Saigon. And it's the same thing, night after night. Darkness falls. Then, an explosion. Gunfire. Total chaos. But by the time your troops scramble to respond, it's already over. There's just silence. And the attackers? Poof! Vanished into thin air.
So, let's talk about fighting an unseen enemy. I mean, for the soldiers on the ground, this was absolutely terrifying. You're in what you've been told is an impenetrable fortress, but you're getting picked off, seemingly from the inside. How do you fight an enemy you can't see, you can't find, and you just plain can't understand?
So they searched. For months, patrols swept the jungles all around the base, and they found nothing. Absolutely nothing. No camps, no supply lines, not a single shred of evidence. It was a total mystery. And then one day, a patrol stumbles on it. A tiny little hole, almost perfectly hidden under some leaves. An engineer gets down, shines a flashlight inside, and realizes this little opening? It's the first piece of an absolutely terrifying puzzle.
But before we go any further down that rabbit hole, literally, we need to back up a little. To really get why these tunnels even existed, you have to understand the bigger picture. You have to understand the war itself. I mean, why were Americans even there, fighting in the jungles of Vietnam, halfway across the globe?
Okay, here's the really quick history lesson. For almost 100 years, Vietnam was a French colony. Then, in the 1940s, a nationalist leader, Ho Chi Minh, steps up to fight for independence. After a long, brutal war, the French are finally defeated in 1954. And what happens? The country gets split right down the middle, a communist north and an anti-communist south. And that is where the US comes into the picture. Remember, this is the height of the Cold War. America is absolutely terrified of communism spreading. They had this idea called the domino theory. Basically, they believed that if South Vietnam fell to communism, it would set off a chain reaction. Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, the whole region would fall like a row of dominoes. And so, just like that, Vietnam became a critical battleground in this global ideological struggle.
Okay, so now that we have that context, let's go back to that tiny hole in the ground. Because what the Americans were about to uncover was the incredible, almost unbelievable answer to the whole mystery of the ghosts. They weren't fighting ghosts at all. They were fighting an entire city. A city that was living, breathing, and operating right under their own feet.
And when I say city, I'm not exaggerating. The sheer scale of this thing is just mind-boggling. We are talking about 250 kilometers. That's like 155 miles of interconnected tunnels. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. It was all dug by hand. No machines. Just simple hose and wicker baskets to carry out the dirt. Dirt that they would then meticulously scatter so it couldn't be spotted by planes. And this wasn't just random digging either. Their ingenuity was incredible. The tunnels were built in 3 distinct levels, each with a purpose. Level 1, about 3 meters deep. That was for quick access and fighting, deep enough to survive artillery shells. Level 2, 6 meters down, that was safe from most heavy bombs. And then there was Level 3, a staggering 9 meters deep, designed to survive a direct hit from a B-52.
And I really want to stress this point. These weren't just some crude escape routes. This was a fully functioning, self-sufficient city beneath the battlefield. They had hospitals with operating tables. They had kitchens, but the smoke was cleverly vented hundreds of meters away so it wouldn't give them away. They had weapons factories, printing presses to make propaganda, even wells for fresh water. And get this, sleeping quarters for up to 10,000 people.
So what you have here is the ultimate story of technology versus ingenuity. It's a real-life David and Goliath situation. On one side, you've got the United States, with the most technologically advanced military the world had ever seen. And on the other side, you have the Viet Cong, armed with dirt, determination, and just this unbelievable level of cleverness.
So the first U.S. tactic was just overwhelming force, carpet bombing. They sent in the B-52s to drop thousands upon thousands of tons of bombs, turning the jungle above into something that looked like the surface of the moon. But it didn't work. The Viet Cong's counter? They just went deeper. They'd head down to that third level and simply wait for the bombing to stop.
All right, so when bombs didn't work, the U.S. tried poison gas. They'd pump it into any entrance they could find. But the Viet Cong were already one step ahead. They had built this ingenious system of airtight, watertight trapdoors throughout the tunnels. So if gas started flooding one section, thump, they'd just seal it off, sacrificing a tiny part of the network to save the whole.
Okay, this next one is brilliant. The U.S. even brought in highly trained scent dogs, German shepherds, to sniff out the hidden entrances. And the Viet Cong adapted again. What did they do? They'd steal American soap and uniforms from the base and use them to mask the scent around the entrances, confusing the dogs. And if that wasn't enough, they'd sprinkle pepper all over the ground to just completely disable the dog's sense of smell. So clever.
So, with all this high-tech stuff failing, the Americans had to turn to the one thing that could go where a machine couldn't: a person. They created these special units of soldiers, usually smaller guys, whose job it was to go down into the darkness themselves. These men, they called themselves the tunnel rats.
And just look at their gear. We're talking a pistol, a flashlight, and a knife. That's it. No helmet, no body armor. They couldn't even take a rifle because it was too long to turn around in the tight spaces. Think about that for a second. The entire might of the U.S. military basically reduced to one lone person with a handgun, crawling through the dark.
And what they found down there was a literal house of horrors. The tunnels were just riddled with these vicious, low-tech booby traps, pits filled with sharpened bamboo stakes called punji sticks, often smeared with poison, or worse. They'd hide venomous snakes like bamboo vipers in little nooks. They even rigged boxes of scorpions or fire ants to drop down from the ceilings. It was just nightmarish.
But you know, for many of the tunnel rats, the physical traps weren't even the worst part. It was the psychological terror, the absolute crushing blackness, the intense claustrophobia of being squeezed into these tiny spaces, and the silence. A silence so profound that the single most terrifying sound in the world was hearing someone else breathe when you knew you were supposed to be alone.
So, after all of this, after years of fighting, billions of dollars spent, thousands and thousands of lives lost, what was the end result? Who actually won this bizarre war that was fought both above and below the ground?
Well, the results really do speak for themselves. You look at the U.S. military. They brought B-52 bombers, Agent Orange, poison gas, billions of dollars. And the Viet Cong? They had shovels, pepper, and bamboo. And the result? By 1975, when the last American troops withdrew, the Cu Chi tunnel system was still operational. Technology simply couldn't defeat it.
But we have to be really clear about something. This wasn't some clean victory. The price was absolutely devastating. The U.S. 25th Infantry Division, stationed right there at Cu Chi, suffered some of the highest casualty rates of the entire war. And on the other side, tens of thousands of Viet Cong died in the very tunnels they called home. The human cost for everyone involved was just staggering.
When you look at it all, the story of the Cu Chi tunnels really tells us something profound. It's that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a bomb or a plane. It's the willingness to just keep going, especially when everything you have above ground has been taken away.
And that really leaves us with one big question to think about. In a fight between overwhelming technology on one side and just unbreakable human will on the other, what does a story like this tell us about the true limits of power?